As of October 6th, when we're publishing this video, the UCLA 5 are currently on trial in Los Angeles. The UCLA 5 are members of the Revolution Club in Los Angeles and Refuse Fascism, who are right now facing 2 years in jail for speaking out when Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin and former Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel came to speak at UCLA campus. A verdict in this trial is expected this week, and you need to make your voice heard to demand the charges be dropped. These defendants should be celebrated for their bravery and for their farsightedness of standing up against the fascism of the Trump-Pence regime. Instead, the UCLA administration initiated their arrest, banned them from campus, had their UCPD police department spy on them, and UC administrators testified against them in the court this past week. This trial is a major attack on campus free speech and on the space of anti-fascist protesters to stand up against the consolidating fascism of the Trump-Pence regime. Their battle is your battle. And in this video, you're going to hear from Atlas Winfrey, one of the defendants, on what this case is about and how you can and need to be part of demanding that all the charges be dropped.
Okay, great. So my name's Atlas. As Sansara said, I'm one of the defendants in the Freeway 9 case, as well as the UCLA 5 case. So I'm going to tell you briefly about all of that, and then I want to talk to you about what's going on in Los Angeles. What's the plan? What are people up to about this initiative, October 19th, beginning these protests? So here's what you got to know. Here's the basics. There were protests in Los Angeles against this fascist regime. The first was protests where 9 individuals took a giant banner down onto the 101 freeway in Los Angeles, blocking it. The banner said the Trump-Pence must go. And they were pretty brutally arrested off of that freeway. They were cited, they went to court, and lo and behold, the city attorney had not filed any charges. There was the protests involved in the UCLA 5 case. These were a couple of protests. One was a protest that happened when the former mayor of Chicago, Rahm Emanuel, came to campus. Rahm Emanuel was involved in the cover-up of the murder of Laquan McDonald, who was shot 16 times by a police officer who was later convicted of, I believe, manslaughter or murder, I can't recall. So, and then another speaker came. This speaker was the highest cabinet official to come to the UCLA campus from the Trump-Pence regime. His name is Secretary Steve Mnuchin, the Secretary of Treasury. And he's got 2 responsibilities: get that money for this regime, and then 2, he has a national security role enforcing sanctions. Now, a lot of people hear about sanctions. You know, we hear it on the news every day. Very few people know what that actually means. So Mnuchin put sanctions on North Korea and Iran. And what that means is that people are going to starve to death. Sanctions mean denying people access to money, resources, medicines. For example, there's children who are dying in Iran because they can't get access to the kind of radioisotopes that are used for chemotherapy, because allegedly Iran could use it to develop nuclear material for nuclear weapons. And so you have children who are suffering from this. You have the masses of people that are suffering for this. And so, you know, 3 young women, they go to this speech from the Treasury Secretary. They're a part of the revolution. They're a part of Refuse Fascism. And they hear him start talking about sanctions. Now, lots of people are hissing in the crowd. You know, when he's talking and he's saying disagreeable things, people are hissing. You know, people are standing up and saying, "Hey, you're full of shit," you know, things like this. And no arrests are happening. But then one of the UCLA 5 defendants, she starts speaking, talking about what these sanctions mean and the consequences for people here and all over the world, what that's going to mean, that people are going to die.
You are punishing them for the misery that this system, the system that you're enforcing,
time for you to leave. You need to go.
Is committing.
And for that, within seconds of beginning to speak, she's ripped out of her seat, picked up like a sack of potatoes, and dragged out of the auditorium, as well as 2 other young women that began to voice disagreements with this fascist regime. Now, these people, they all go to court. They have their citation slip. They're wondering what's going to happen. And yet the city attorney isn't filing charges. They find out, is that a cause to celebrate? We don't know. About 1 year ago, everybody gets a letter in the mail that says that the city attorney is filing 56 charges all at once against 10 defendants. Charges that are going to mean years in jail if convicted, up to 2 years in jail if convicted. And in the process of going through these court cases, certain things have come to light. One is that the Los Angeles Police Department, specifically the Anti-Terrorist Division, the Major Crimes Division, has been sending police informants in to refuse fascism meetings in churches, spying, trying to get certain people in the organization to talk about plans for civil disobedience, trying to lead them in certain directions. And it also has come to light that on the UCLA campus, the UCLA Police Department has been following people around on the campus. They're saying they see people in the shirts. They're saying that they're seeing people that they've recognized at demonstrations. They're following them. They're taking pictures. They're taking down license plates. And so here we are. We're standing in court, and people keep asking us, why are you in court for this? This doesn't make sense. Aren't those rights we have? Don't we have free speech? Isn't it not that big of a deal? Why is there this whole trial going on for this? Well, let me talk to you about why this trial is going on. What's the bigger story about what's going on? So this Trump-Pence regime, they've been passing laws. People are familiar with some of them. Laws that say that people in cars can run over protesters as long as it was an accident. And what are we seeing? You know, we've seen videos of people running into those never again protesters with their trucks. You know, we've seen this. People are doing this, right? This is all a part of the way in which dissent, protest, is being increasingly criminalized. What that means is what one day was protected constitutional speech is actually now a criminal violation. And some of the ways that this is taking shape on the campus is that you have, you know, all these different fascist intellectuals, people that go onto the campuses because they want to make an intellectual argument about why Black people are inferior, or about why climate change isn't real, about why there isn't objective truth. And this has elicited protests from students, rightfully so. These people that come onto campus and say that women should be forced to bear children whether they like it or not. These are the kinds of people who are coming onto campuses, and students are speaking up and speaking out. Not enough, but there is some. And the administrations of different universities, including UCLA, have been forced to respond to this. They're changing their policies, and including just this last year, Trump signed an executive order on freedom of speech, which the executive order said that basically all these different fascist speakers who come to campuses have to ensure their right to speak. They have to ensure that they can go on to the campuses and talk about whatever they want, whether it's denying the science of climate change or whatever. And that if the university doesn't ensure that they can speak completely, without protest, without demonstration, without being shut down, that then the federal government can pull all kinds of funding away from them. So what do you think that these campuses are going to do? Are they going to say that, you know what, after all, you know, freedom of speech and dissent is, after all, the most important thing in society, so, you know what, screw the funding? Well, the reality is that what they've done is that they've continued to restrict the freedom of people to protest. On campuses, you have this thing called time, manner, and place. They say, okay, you can't just speak whenever you want. You can't, you know, so we're going to restrict the time, manner, and place of how you can speak. And what they're doing is they're restricting it so far that it's getting to the point that you might as well go home and scream into your pillow, because that is what they're telling you is the only appropriate time, manner, and place to protest. We're in a situation where the ground from which we have to oppose this fascism is being destroyed. These fascists, look at Secretary Steve Mnuchin. He can go onto any television news channel that he wants. He can get an interview any day of the week. He can go onto Newsweek. He can go onto Marketplace. He can, if he writes an op-ed to a newspaper, it's most likely going to get published. But what about you? What about the people who are listening to this? If you want to write something about the sanctions, can you get it published in Fox News or the New York Times or anything like that? Well, maybe one of you, or maybe none of you. These people have the platform in society. They have the bully pulpit of the state, and they are implementing their policies. And the way that they're implementing their policies are exactly going after the foundation by which we have to oppose them. So this is the context. Speech is being criminalized, and the way it's happening on campuses is making it so that students are increasingly unable to oppose these things. They're increasingly being told that the only purpose of the campuses is for you to shut the hell up, put your nose down in your books, and worry about yourself. Don't worry about those people that don't look like you. Don't worry about those people that don't speak the same language as you. Don't worry about the planet. Just put your nose into your books and shut up. And so now the question is posed to people broadly in society, and particularly to students. What will be the role of campuses? Will they be institutions of fascist propaganda? Or will they actually be the kind of places full of vibrant dissent, science, and critical thinking that is absolutely essential to fighting for any kind of world, any kind of positive world, any kind of future for humanity? That's what's bound up in these cases. And so I'm one of the defendants. I was specifically a part of protesting the speech of Rahm Emanuel. He was the former Chicago mayor, and it had to do with the things that he was justifying. He was justifying in his speech this genocide against Black people in the south and west side of Chicago, and that's a whole thing to get into. But the main thing here is to people who are listening and people broadly in society, which side are you on, and what are you going to do in the face of this? And there are ways that you can be a part of this. There are ways that you can act to defend the UCLA 5. Here's a few ways. One, go to the Refuse Fascism website, right? Check it out. There's a petition there. There's phone numbers where you could call the city attorney. Mike Fewer is his name. He's a Democratic city prosecutor. And you can tell him, drop the charges on the UCLA 5. Stop this. This is unnecessary. It's illegitimate. It's unacceptable, period. Two, donate at refusefascism.org to sustain these defendants. We're being prosecuted full time. It's like a 40-hour-a-week job where they just sit there and they pull police officer after police officer and put them on the stand where they lie and slander and talk about how it was so justified the way that they brutalized you as they were infringing on your rights. And so donating is a big way that you can actually contribute to this. And third, there is that petition, and you should sign it, and you should get the word out everywhere. If you know professors who would want to do something, like having someone like me or one of the other UCLA 5 defendants speak, right? Let's do a webinar, something like this. Let's Skype into their classroom and talk about this. If you know people, if you're a part of a democratic society or something like that, have us Skype into your meeting and have us talk about these cases. This is a big part of building support and getting this known nationally.